I was standing in my parents' living room, exhausted from another overnight shift at the hospital billing office, when my sister Alyssa dramatically wiped away a fake tear. Her voice carried across the crowded room, loud enough for every single person to hear. "I'm the one who's been covering Mom and Dad's medical bills. It's been so hard." Gasps rippled through our extended family. Someone started clapping. Within seconds, the whole room erupted in applause. My mother pulled Alyssa into a tight embrace, sobbing into her shoulder. My father's eyes glistened with tears as he mouthed thank you to his favorite daughter. I stood frozen near the kitchen doorway, my hand instinctively clutching my purse where I kept a folder of receipts, every single one bearing my name, my signature, my credit card numbers. Alyssa glanced back at me over Mom's shoulder, her perfectly made-up face wearing a smug smile. She mouthed two words that made my blood run cold. "You're welcome." My heart cracked open right there in that room full of people who should have known better. My name is Kira Devlin, and that was the moment I realized my sister wasn't just selfish, she was willing to erase me completely. The celebration continued around me like I was invisible. My Aunt Melanie pulled me aside into the hallway, her expression a mixture of pity and judgment. "Why didn't you help them like Alyssa did?" she whispered, her hand on my arm feeling more like an accusation than comfort. "I know money's been tight for you, but family comes first." The question hit me like a physical punch to the stomach. I opened my mouth to defend myself, to tell her the truth, but no words came out. Behind us, I could hear Alyssa laughing, that bright, performative laugh she reserved for moments when she was the center of attention. Someone was taking photos with her and our parents. She posed with Mom on one side, Dad on the other, smiling like a saint who'd just performed a miracle. The phone cameras clicked and flashed, capturing the lie for posterity. I walked out of the house before my voice could betray me with the scream building in my throat. Nobody noticed me leave. Nobody called after me. I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes, hands shaking on the steering wheel, before I could trust myself to drive home. My mind drifted back to the night Mom collapsed. It had been 18 months ago, a regular Tuesday evening that turned into a nightmare. I'd been making dinner when Dad called, his voice shaking with panic. Alyssa had been on a trip that week. Some wellness retreat in Arizona with her fiancé. She'd posted photos of sunrise yoga and green smoothies while I spent 36 hours straight in the hospital waiting room. I was the one who signed the admission papers with trembling hands. I was the one who held Mom's hand during the CAT scan. I was the one who called the insurance company at 3 in the morning, trying to understand what would be covered. A nurse had found me crying in the hallway during hour 28. She'd touched my shoulder gently and asked, "Is there anyone else who can help you with this? Family? Friends?" I remembered whispering through my tears, "No. Just me." Alyssa had flown home 4 days later, swept into the hospital room with flowers and designer coffee, and hugged Mom like she'd been there all along. Nobody had asked where she'd been. Nobody had seemed to care. That night after leaving my parents' house, I sat on my apartment floor surrounded by 18 months of hospital receipts. I'd kept every single one, a habit born from years of working in medical billing, understanding how important documentation was. I spread them out in chronological order across my living room carpet. Emergency room visit. Specialist consultations. Physical therapy sessions. Prescription co-pays. Follow-up appointments. The second hospitalization when Mom's condition worsened. Dad's cardiac event 6 months later that nobody had seen coming. Every single receipt bore my name in the responsible party field. Every payment confirmation showed my credit card numbers. The last 4 digits I'd memorized from typing them so many times. My handwriting on the signature lines. My email address for billing statements. I counted them, 73 separate payments over 18 months. Over $42,000 that I'd scraped together through overtime shifts, selling my car for a cheaper one, moving to a smaller apartment, giving up every small luxury I'd once enjoyed. How did she turn my sacrifice into her performance? I whispered to my empty apartment. The anger that had been simmering finally began to boil. 2 days later, my phone rang while I was at work. Aunt Melanie's name appeared on the screen. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Kira. Her voice was thick with tears. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. My stomach clenched. What is it? Alyssa told us, me and your Uncle Paul and Cousin Beth, that you refused to help with your parents' medical bills. That you said you couldn't afford it and didn't care. She said she'd been begging you for months to contribute, even offering to split everything 50-50, but you just didn't respond. The room tilted. She said what? Is it true? Because if you were struggling, we would have understood. We could have helped. But to just abandon them when they needed. I hung up before she could finish. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Around me, my coworkers pretended not to notice my distress, but I could feel their curious glances. I grabbed my purse and headed for the bathroom, locking myself in a stall. For 10 minutes, I focused on breathing, in through my nose, out through my mouth, trying not to scream or cry or both. That evening, scrolling through social media was a mistake I couldn't resist making. Alyssa had posted a new photo earlier that day. A professionally filtered image of her holding Mom's hand in the sunlit living room. Mom was smiling, eyes closed peacefully, while Alyssa gazed at her with theatrical concern. The caption made my stomach turn, long nights paying bills and making sure Mom and Dad have everything they need, but family is everything. The post had 300 likes already. Comments poured in praising her selflessness, her dedication, her beautiful heart. Someone had even called her an inspiration. My cousin Beth had commented, "You're amazing, Alyssa. So proud of you for taking care of them when others wouldn't step up." Others wouldn't step up. The words were a knife between my ribs. I wanted to comment the truth. To post photos of my receipts. To scream into the void of social media that everything was a lie. But something stopped me, maybe pride, maybe disbelief that it had come to this, maybe the small hope that the truth would somehow emerge on its own. I closed the app before I could do something I'd regret. But I nearly threw my phone across the room. The next week, I went to City Medical Center to pay another invoice, Dad's cardiac follow-up appointment and medication refill. The hospital had become almost like a second home over the past year and a half. I knew the parking lot layout by heart, knew which coffee in the cafeteria was least terrible, knew the billing office staff by name. The receptionist, a kind woman named Patricia who'd processed dozens of my payments, smiled warmly when she saw me approach the counter. "Kira. Good to see you, honey. How are your parents doing?" "Better," I managed. "Dad's cardiac numbers are improving." "That's wonderful." She pulled up my account on her computer. "Oh, I should mention, your sister called earlier this week asking for copies of recent bills. She said she wanted proof for reimbursement purposes." My stomach twisted into a knot. She asked for copies? Yes, just yesterday. We sent them to the email she provided. "Is everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Everything's fine. Thank you, Patricia." But everything was not fine. Alyssa was collecting documentation, my documentation, for some purpose I couldn't yet understand. And it terrified me. Sunday dinner at my parents' house had become a weekly obligation I dreaded. I went because not going would raise questions I wasn't ready to answer. But sitting at that table, watching Alyssa perform her role as the devoted daughter, was torture. "I'll keep helping with the bills, of course," Alyssa said, passing the mashed potatoes to Dad. "Whatever you need. Don't even worry about it." Mom reached across the table to squeeze her hand, tears welling up. "You're an angel. We don't know what we'd do without you." Dad nodded emphatically. "You've been such a blessing during this difficult time." They looked at me then, brief glances that held nothing but expectation that I'd agree, that I'd praise my sister along with them. Like I was just another audience member in Alyssa's performance, not the person actually funding their survival. I stabbed at my green beans and said nothing. In their eyes, I was empty space, a supporting character who existed only to highlight their golden daughter's goodness. After dinner, I helped clear the dishes in silence while Alyssa held court in the living room, sharing stories about her charity work. Nobody asked if I needed help. Nobody thanked me for coming. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was organizing files at work. I almost didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer. Ms. Kira Devlin? A professional female voice asked. Yes, this is she. This is Amanda from City Medical Center's billing department. I'm calling to confirm your payment method for next month's scheduled charges. We have your credit card on file ending in 4729, but we wanted to verify. I interrupted, confusion flooding through me. I'm sorry, but my sister is handling the payments now. Alyssa Devlin. She should be your point of contact. There was a pause. Papers rustled in the background. I'm sorry, Ms. Devlin, but we don't have anyone named Alyssa Devlin listed anywhere in our system as a responsible party for your parents' accounts. You're still listed as the primary contact and payer for both accounts. My office suddenly felt airless. That's impossible. She told everyone she's been paying. Amanda's voice became gentler, more careful. I'm looking at 18 months of payment history. Every single payment has come from you. Would you like me to email you the complete transaction history? Yes, I whispered. Please. That evening, I confronted Alyssa. I drove to the trendy downtown apartment she shared with her fiancé Blake, the one with the doorman and the rooftop pool, and knocked until she answered. Kira? She looked genuinely surprised to see me, her silk robe and face mask suggesting I'd interrupted her self-care routine. What are you doing here? I pushed past her into the apartment. You haven't paid a single cent toward Mom and Dad's medical bills. Her surprised expression melted into something colder. She actually laughed, a short, sharp sound that held no humor. Is that what this is about? You've been lying to everyone. To our parents. To our entire family. You're taking credit for. It's not about the money, Kira. She crossed her arms, leaning against her kitchen counter like we were discussing something trivial. It's about them appreciating me. Mom and Dad have always seen you as the responsible one, the reliable one. Do you know how exhausting that is? Being compared to you constantly? My hands shook at my sides. They're appreciating a lie. They're appreciating what they need to appreciate. Her voice was cold now, matter of fact. You're good at being invisible and handling things quietly. I'm good at being seen. We all have our roles. The next morning, I received a call from a financial counselor at City Medical Center. Her name was Brenda, and her voice carried the careful professionalism of someone about to deliver bad news. Ms. Devlin, I'm calling about your parents' accounts. We have some overdue balances that need to be addressed. I gripped my phone tighter. That's impossible. I've been staying current on everything. Yes, you have been. She paused. But there are additional charges that have accrued, charges your sister said she would cover when we spoke to her 3 weeks ago. She assured us the payments would be processed by the end of that week. No funds ever came through. My vision blurred. What charges? How much? Nearly $6,000 in copays and deductibles from recent appointments. When you missed the last payment cycle, because your sister told us she'd handle it, the account fell into overdue status. I didn't miss anything. I was never told, I stopped, realization dawning. She told you she'd take over the payments? Brenda's voice softened with understanding. Yes. She was very convincing. I'm sorry, Ms. Devlin. If we'd known there was confusion, we would have contacted you directly. I sat down heavily in my desk chair, my career in medical billing making the implications crystal clear. Alyssa hadn't just lied, she'd actively interfered with my parents' care. Later that week, I was walking past the consultation room near my parents' hospital wing when I heard Alyssa's voice. She was on her phone, her tone light and unconcerned. She'll never call the hospital herself. Kira hates confrontation. She'd rather just keep paying quietly than make a scene. A pause. No, Blake, she won't figure it out. Trust me, I know my sister. She's too afraid of looking petty to ever call me out publicly. I stood frozen in the hallway, my back pressed against the wall, listening to my sister describe my weaknesses to her fiancé like they were tools she could use. My heart pounded so hard I was sure someone would hear it. Mom and Dad will never believe her over me anyway, Alyssa continued. I've been the problem child who made good. She's just the responsible one who's supposed to handle everything. That's her role. She should be grateful I'm at least giving them someone to appreciate. Her laugh echoed down the hallway as she ended the call. She had no idea I'd just spent that morning calling the hospital myself. She had no idea I'd requested complete documentation of every interaction she'd had with their billing department. She had no idea the paper trail I was building. I spent the weekend gathering evidence. Every document, every receipt, every credit card statement, every email confirmation. I organized them chronologically in a large folder, creating a timeline of 18 months of payments, all made by me, none by Alyssa. I included the hospital's transaction history that Amanda had emailed me. I printed out screenshots of Alyssa's social media posts claiming credit. I added copies of the payment schedules showing my name as the sole responsible party. For the first time in weeks, my hands stopped shaking. This wasn't about revenge or vindication, it was about truth. Documentation didn't lie. Numbers didn't have favorites. Records couldn't be manipulated by a pretty smile and tearful performance. I labeled the folder clearly across the top: medical expenses, Devlin family. Paid by Kira Devlin. My therapist had always told me I needed to set boundaries with my family. To speak up for myself. To stop letting people take advantage of my quiet nature. Looking at that folder, I finally understood what she meant. I wasn't building a case against my sister. I was building proof that I existed, that I mattered, that I'd done something significant, even if nobody had noticed. On Monday morning, I received a call from an insurance adjuster named Mr. Torres. His voice was formal, almost cautious. Ms. Devlin, I'm calling regarding some irregularities we've discovered in reimbursement requests filed under your name. My stomach dropped. What kind of irregularities? Your sister, Alyssa Devlin, has submitted multiple requests for reimbursement of medical expenses, using your name and information. However, the receipts she provided don't match our records of who actually made the payments. I don't understand. She submitted reimbursement requests pretending to be me? Mr. Torres' voice became more serious. Not just pretending to be you, Ms. Devlin. She used your personal information, social security number, address, employment details, to file claims for expenses she didn't pay. That's identity fraud. The room spun. I sat down at my kitchen table, gripping the phone. What happens now? We're required to investigate all fraudulent claims. I wanted to contact you directly before moving forward. You may want to consider filing a police report. I thought about Alyssa's face at that family gathering, her smug smile as she accepted praise that belonged to me. Let me get back to you, I said quietly. But the anger that had been simmering for weeks finally boiled over. I showed up at my parents' house unannounced that evening, the folder of evidence under my arm. I found them in the living room watching television, relaxed and content. Kira. Mom looked surprised. We weren't expecting you. I need to show you something. I spread the overdue notices from the hospital across their coffee table. The hospital called me. Your accounts are overdue by almost $6,000. Dad picked up one of the notices, his face creasing with confusion. But Alyssa said she was handling everything. That's what I need to talk to you about. I pulled out more documents. These are the payment records from the hospital. Every single payment for the last 18 months has come from me. Not Alyssa. Mom stared at the papers, then at me. Her expression was uncertain, almost defensive. There must be some mistake. The front door burst open. Alyssa stormed in. I'd texted her to come, knowing this confrontation needed to happen, her face already arranged in righteous anger. She's twisting everything. Alyssa shouted before anyone could speak. She's upset because I got credit for helping, and now she's trying to make me look bad. Mom and Dad turned to her, and I saw it. That familiar expression of belief, of trust, of automatic assumption that their golden daughter must be telling the truth. It broke something inside me that I hadn't known was still whole. 3 days later, an official letter arrived from City Medical Center's Financial Services office. I opened it with shaking hands, already knowing what it would say but needing to see it confirmed in writing. The letter itemized every single bill I'd paid over the past 18 months. Each line showed the date, the amount, the service provided, and the payment method. At the bottom, in bold letters, one statement stood out. Primary financially responsible person, Kira Devlin. I cried for the first time in months. Not sad tears, angry tears. Tears of frustration that I needed an official document to prove my own sacrifice. Tears of rage that my own family couldn't take my word over my sister's performance. I made 5 copies of that letter. One for my records. One for my parents. One for each of my aunts and uncles who judged me. And one that I'd carry with me to the next family gathering. Let them see the truth in black and white. Let them try to spin this documentation into something Alyssa could explain away. Let them face the reality that they'd praised a liar while ignoring the daughter who'd actually saved them. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Can we all have dinner together this Sunday? We need to clear the air. I knew exactly what was coming. But this time I was ready. Sunday dinner was arranged under the guise of clearing the air, a family meeting to resolve the misunderstanding between Alyssa and me. I arrived early, my folder of evidence in my bag, my heart pounding with anticipation and dread. The entire family was there. Mom and Dad, of course. Aunt Melanie and Uncle Paul. My cousin Beth and her husband. Even my grandmother had been brought in, sitting in her favorite chair like a matriarch presiding over court. Alyssa arrived 20 minutes late, a calculated entrance. Her eyes were already red and puffy, though I knew those tears were manufactured. She'd perfected the art of crying on command in high school drama class. I can't believe she's attacking me like this, Alyssa said to the room, her voice breaking beautifully. All because she's jealous that Mom and Dad appreciated what I'd done. This is so unfair. Everyone turned to look at me. The prodigal daughter needing redemption. The jealous sister causing problems. The ungrateful child making accusations. I didn't say anything. I just pulled the folder from my bag and slid it across my parents' dining room table. I brought the truth, I said quietly. Everything you need to see is in here. I opened the folder with steady hands, spreading documents across the table like evidence at a trial. First, the receipts. Chronological, dated, detailed. Every payment I'd made for 18 months laid out in undeniable black and white. These are from the emergency room visit when Mom first collapsed. I pointed. $1,400. My credit card. This one is from her 3-day hospital stay. Another document. $8,000. My payment plan. Dad's cardiac event. My finger moved across papers. $2,200 for the emergency intervention. My card. I kept going, document after document, payment after payment. Physical therapy. Medications. Follow-up appointments. Specialist consultations. Each one bearing my name, my signature, my financial responsibility. Aunt Melanie leaned forward, her face pale. "Oh my God," she whispered. Uncle Paul picked up several receipts, examining them closely. These are all yours. Every single one. Cousin Beth's expression had shifted from judgment to horror. Kira. I had no idea. Alyssa's perfectly maintained smile was starting to twitch at the corners. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. But she said nothing yet, waiting, I realized, to see what other cards I'd play. Mom and Dad sat in stunned silence, passing documents between them, reality slowly dawning across their faces. My phone rang. The timing was so perfect it felt orchestrated by the universe itself, though I knew it was simply the hospital following up on our earlier conversations. The screen displayed, City Medical Center. I looked at Alyssa, saw the flash of panic in her eyes, and made a decision. I answered the call on speakerphone. Hello, Ms. Devlin? Amanda's professional voice filled the silent room. This is Amanda from City Medical Center billing. I'm following up on our conversation from last week about the overdue balances. Yes, Amanda. I have you on speaker. My family is here with me. A brief pause, then. I wanted to confirm we still haven't received the payments your sister promised. We've reviewed our complete records, and we only have your payments on file for the past 18 months. You're listed as the sole financially responsible party for both your parents' accounts. The silence in the room was deafening. Every eye turned to Alyssa. We need to resolve this overdue amount soon, Amanda continued, unaware of the bomb she'd just detonated. Otherwise, it will impact your parents' ability to schedule future appointments. I understand, I said quietly. I'll take care of it by the end of the week. Thank you, Amanda. I ended the call. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Alyssa exploded. The mask she'd been wearing for so long shattered completely, revealing something ugly underneath. They were supposed to give me credit, she screamed, standing up so fast her chair toppled backward. She didn't need it. Everyone already knows she's responsible and boring and does everything right. I deserved recognition for once. Mom flinched. Dad's face had gone pale. I've lived in your shadow my whole life. Alyssa's voice cracked, but these tears seemed genuine, tears of rage and frustration, not her usual calculated performance. Perfect Kira. Reliable Kira. The daughter who never makes mistakes. Do you know how exhausting it is being compared to you constantly? So you committed fraud? Uncle Paul's voice cut through her tantrum. You filed false insurance claims using your sister's identity? It wasn't fraud. I was just correcting the record. Making sure people appreciated what someone was doing for them. My father's voice, when he finally spoke, was barely above a whisper. What have you done, Alyssa? The room recoiled from her rage. Grandmother closed her eyes. Aunt Melanie covered her mouth with her hand. Cousin Beth pulled away from the table like Alyssa's confession was contagious. For the first time in my life, I saw my family look at Alyssa with something other than indulgent fondness. They saw her clearly. And they were ashamed. Alyssa fled the house in tears, her fiancé Blake arriving to collect her 20 minutes later. Through the window, I watched them argue in his car, her gesturing wildly, him shaking his head, the body language of a relationship fracturing in real time. Inside, my relatives sat in shocked silence. The evidence was still spread across the table, a paper trail of truth they couldn't ignore or explain away. Dad was the first to speak, his voice thick with emotion. Kira. I don't know what to say. His hand shook as he reached for mine. We've been so blind. So incredibly blind. Mom cried quietly, tears of shame rather than pride this time. You've been carrying all of this alone. While we praised her and ignored you. I'm sorry, I said, my own voice breaking. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just wanted someone to see me. To acknowledge that I was trying my best. Aunt Melanie crossed the room and pulled me into a tight embrace. I'm so sorry, honey. For judging you. For believing her without question. You deserved so much better from all of us. One by one, my family members apologized. It didn't erase the 18 months of being invisible, but it was a start. For the first time in longer than I could remember, they looked ashamed on behalf of the right daughter. The hospital contacted me again 2 days later, but this time the call wasn't about billing. It was from a director in their compliance department. Ms. Devlin, we've opened a formal investigation into the fraudulent reimbursement claims filed by your sister. We're required to report this to the insurance companies involved and, potentially, to law enforcement. My stomach tightened. I don't want to press charges. I just want this to end. The director's voice was sympathetic but firm. I understand. But this isn't just about you anymore. Your sister committed insurance fraud, which is a crime that affects everyone's premiums and the integrity of the healthcare system. The investigation will proceed regardless of whether you participate. What happens to her? That depends on the findings. But fraudulent insurance claims are taken very seriously. There will be consequences. I hung up feeling conflicted. I hadn't wanted to destroy Alyssa, I'd just wanted the truth acknowledged. But her actions had set wheels in motion that I couldn't stop, even if I wanted to. Later that day, Blake called me. Your sister is losing everything, he said quietly. Her job is investigating her for the same kind of behavior. And I can't marry someone who'd do something like this. I didn't know what to say. I'm sorry felt wrong. Good felt cruel. So I just listened as he explained he'd called off the engagement. Over the following weeks, I watched Alyssa's carefully constructed life collapse. Her employer, discovering she'd filed fraudulent expense reports using similar tactics to her insurance fraud, terminated her position. Blake moved out of their apartment, leaving her scrambling to cover rent she'd never budgeted for alone. Family members who'd once fawned over her now kept their distance. Cousin Beth blocked her on social media. Aunt Melanie stopped returning her calls. Even grandmother, who'd always had a soft spot for her, looked away when Alyssa's name came up. The perfect image she'd cultivated, the successful, generous, devoted daughter, shattered completely. Social media posts about her charity work and family dedication were deleted or hidden. Friends who'd praised her began quietly distancing themselves. She called me 3 times. I saw her name on my screen each time and felt my finger hover over the answer button. But I didn't pick up. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I didn't feel victorious watching her fall. Just sad. Sad that it had come to this. Sad that her need for recognition had been so desperate she'd destroyed her own life to get it. Sad that we'd reached a point where being sisters meant nothing except shared DNA and mutual damage. But I didn't feel guilty either. She'd made her choices. These were simply the consequences. 2 months after that explosive family dinner, I received an unexpected call from the hospital's financial director. She'd heard about my situation through Amanda and wanted to meet with me personally. In her office, she explained that the hospital was so impressed with my dedication and consistency in managing my parents' care that they wanted to help. They were offering me a flexible work schedule so I could better support my parents' ongoing medical needs without sacrificing my career. We see what you've done, she said warmly. How you've juggled everything. You deserve support, not just recognition. She also handed me a letter praising my dedication and suggesting I qualified for caregiver assistance programs I'd never known existed. Programs that could help reduce the financial burden I'd been carrying alone. That weekend, I visited my parents. For the first time in 18 months, they truly saw what I'd done, not through the lens of comparing me to Alyssa, but as a daughter who'd sacrificed without asking for anything in return. Mom hugged me tight and whispered, "You carried us, not her. And we'll never forget that again." Dad's eyes were wet as he squeezed my hand. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Not for the money, for your character. For being who you are." Something inside me healed. Not completely, but enough to breathe easier. Enough to believe that maybe, finally, I was seen. 6 months later, I sat on my parents' back porch watching the sunset. Dad's cardiac health had stabilized. Mom's mobility had improved significantly with continued physical therapy. They were healthier, more stable, and deeply grateful. Alyssa hadn't spoken to anyone in the family since that dinner. I'd heard through cousin Beth that she'd moved to another state, starting over somewhere nobody knew her history. Part of me hoped she'd find peace there. Another part didn't care anymore. Dad sat down beside me, 2 glasses of iced tea in his hands. He passed me one and we sat in comfortable silence for a moment before he spoke. You never bragged. Never asked for praise. Never demanded recognition. His voice was thick with emotion. You just quietly saved us. That takes a special kind of strength. I smiled softly, watching the sky turn orange and pink. I didn't do it for praise. I did it because it was right. I know, he said. That's what makes you remarkable. The real victory, I realized, wasn't Alyssa's downfall. It wasn't the family's apologies or the hospital's recognition. It was this, sitting peacefully with my parents, knowing I'd done the right thing even when nobody was watching, even when nobody appreciated it. I'd finally stepped out of the shadow Alyssa had forced me into. The shadow I'd allowed myself to remain in for too long. And I was never going back.